Imagine you're standing at the edge of a vast river, surrounded by mist, and everything you thought you knew about yourself feels like it's slipping away. You know deep inside that you are capable of so much more, but fear, doubt, and insecurity hold you back. You're not alone. Many people live their lives with the weight of fear on their shoulders, paralyzed by the idea that they might fail, that they might not measure up. It's a feeling that can consume you, shaping the way you see the world and the way the world sees you. This is the story of a young man who spent years trapped in the cycle of self-doubt. His life was like a boat drifting aimlessly in the river, no direction, no purpose. He wasn't always this way, though. He had dreams. But those dreams were suffocated by his fear of judgment and his lack of self-confidence. He didn't realize it at first, but his mind was his biggest enemy. A shy boy, often ridiculed for his quiet nature, he was constantly overshadowed by his more confident younger brother. His father, a successful businessman, was disappointed in him, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't break free from the walls he had built around himself. As time passed, his lack of confidence began to affect his work, his relationships, and even his future. It was as if he was invisible to the world, unable to make his voice heard. But what he didn't know was that the turning point in his life was just around the corner, an encounter with a stranger that would forever change the course of his destiny. This is a journey of transformation, of facing fears, breaking down barriers, and discovering the strength that lies within us all. Stay with me, because this story is not just his. It's the story of anyone who's ever felt lost, unsure, or incapable of stepping into their true potential. It's a reminder that no matter how deep our fears run, we have the power to rise above them. The encounter with the stranger that day by the river was the beginning of something unexpected. It was a lifeline thrown to a drowning soul, a chance for redemption that he never saw coming. But as much as the young man wanted to believe in this sudden spark of hope, his inner voice, the one filled with doubt, kept whispering, "You're not good enough. You don't deserve a second chance." He walked away from that riverbank, still unsure of what he was capable of. After all, how could he, someone who had failed so many times before, possibly change? But the old man, wise and calm, wasn't going to let him walk away easily. He spoke softly, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "If you want to change your life, you must first confront your own beliefs. You must break the chains that hold you back." His words, though simple, struck a chord deep within the young man. Was it really possible? Could he truly overcome the fears that had defined his existence for so long? As if reading his mind, the old man smiled gently. "I have a way. But first you must follow me. I will give you 3 tasks. If you complete them, I will show you what you are capable of." The young man, exhausted and skeptical, nodded without fully understanding the gravity of what was being asked of him. What did he have to lose? At that moment, the prospect of failure seemed less terrifying than the idea of living a life devoid of hope. The first task was simple in words, but daunting in practice. Speak to 10 strangers, ask them about their lives, and listen carefully. The young man's heart raced at the thought. Speak to strangers. What could he possibly say to them? He could hardly speak to his own father without trembling. Yet something inside him urged him to take the first step. And so he set off, his mind filled with both fear and a flicker of curiosity. What would he learn about others? And more importantly, what would he discover about himself? With every step he took, the young man felt his heart pound louder in his chest. The weight of the task ahead felt heavy, and his mind was filled with a whirlwind of thoughts. What will they think of me? What if I mess up? The doubts came rushing in, as they always did. But the image of the old man's calm face lingered in his mind, giving him the courage to push forward. He wasn't sure why he had agreed to this challenge, but something inside him whispered, "Maybe this is the only way out. Maybe this is the way to prove to myself that I can change." He began his first conversation with a woman sitting alone at a park bench. Her eyes flicked up when he nervously approached, and for a moment he felt a wave of panic. But then something unexpected happened. She smiled warmly, and for the first time in a long while, He didn't feel judged. He asked her about her day, and she shared small details about her life. He listened intently, nodding along, and soon their conversation grew more natural. By the time they parted ways, he realized something profound. He had made it through, a conversation without running away, without feeling like an outsider. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Emboldened, he continued his journey. He spoke to another person, then another. Some were quick to brush him off, others more willing to engage, but each interaction was a small victory. By the time the sun began to set, he had spoken to 10 people. He had learned something about them, and more importantly, he had learned something about himself. Each conversation chipped away at his fear, revealing a flicker of confidence he hadn't known existed. The task wasn't just about talking to strangers. It was about breaking the invisible barriers that had held him back for so long. As the young man made his way back to the old man, a sense of accomplishment washed over him. He had faced his fear and come out on the other side, but he knew deep down that the journey was far from over. There were still more tasks, more challenges to face, and most importantly, more to learn about the person he was becoming. And so, with a cautious but growing sense of hope, he prepared for what was next. The second task awaited him, and this time, he felt a little less afraid. As the young man stood before the old man, his heart swelled with an unfamiliar sense of pride. He had completed the first task, and although it hadn't been easy, he had come to realize that it wasn't just about speaking to strangers. It was about opening up, about allowing himself to be vulnerable, and most importantly, allowing himself to be seen. He had stepped out of his comfort zone, and for the first time he felt a glimmer of something new within him, something that resembled self-belief. But the journey was far from over. The old man's gaze was steady, and his voice calm as he gave the young man the second task. "Now you must teach," he said, his eyes gleaming with wisdom. "You will teach 10 children why water is important. You may feel unqualified, but remember, knowledge is not about being perfect. It's about sharing what you know." The young man hesitated for a moment, his confidence wavering. "Teach children? What if I make a fool of myself?" But the old man's words echoed in his mind. "You can't truly fail if you're willing to. Try." He found the children in a nearby schoolyard, their bright eyes full of curiosity. His hands trembled as he stepped forward, holding a glass of water in his hand. The first words he spoke caught in his throat, but then, remembering the faces of the strangers he had spoken to just days before, he took a deep breath and began. He spoke about the benefits of drinking water, how it kept the body healthy, how it nourished the skin, how it was essential for life itself. His voice was shaky at first, but as he continued, something changed. The children listened intently, nodding along, and the young man began to feel a sense of ease. He wasn't an expert, but he was doing his best, and that was enough. By the end of the lesson, he felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. The children had learned something, and in the process, so had he. He realized that teaching wasn't about being perfect. It was about sharing what you knew with others, about being confident in your own ability to contribute, no matter how small that contribution might seem. As the day came to a close, he returned to the old man, his heart full. He had faced his fear once again, and this time it had felt different. He wasn't the same person who had walked into the old man's house a few days ago, unsure of his worth. Now, there was a quiet strength within him, a belief that maybe, just maybe, he was capable of more than he had ever imagined. But the final challenge awaited him, and the hardest task still lay ahead. The young man walked back to the old man's house, his heart racing with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. He had completed the second task, and although it had been intimidating at first, it had taught him something profound. He didn't need to be perfect. What mattered was the willingness to share, to step forward, even when the fear was still there. The confidence he had gained from teaching the children lingered within him, a reminder that change was possible, one small step at a time. But now, the final task awaited, and he couldn't help but feel a lingering doubt. What could possibly be harder than standing before a group of children? He knew that this last challenge would be the true test of everything he had learned so far. The old man met his gaze, his face serious, yet kind. "Now, you must face the hardest task of all," he said quietly. "Go back to your father. Apologize and ask for his forgiveness." The young man's stomach twisted at the thought. He had been avoiding his father's wrath for so long, avoiding the weight of his disappointment. The idea of facing him again, of confronting all the hurt and shame he had carried for years, filled him with dread. What if he won't forgive me? What if he rejects me again? The old man's voice cut through his fears. This is not just about seeking your father's forgiveness. It's about finding peace within yourself. If you cannot face the person who has hurt you most, you will never be free.